When I found a piece of jewelry that wasn't mine hidden in my husband's car, I never imagined it would lead to uncovering the most devastating betrayal of my 35-year marriage. What I discovered next shattered everything I believed about love, family, and trust. But this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about finding the strength to rebuild when your entire world crumbles. Hey, everyone, I'm Elena, and if you're here, you're probably going through something difficult too. Before we dive in, please hit that like button if you find strength in shared stories. And subscribe because I'll be sharing how I rebuilt my life from the ground up. Also, drop a comment and let me know what city you're watching from. I want to see how far stories of resilience travel. That's how long I thought I knew Marcus Rodriguez inside and out. We built our life in Phoenix together, raised our son Carlos, and I'd spent the last decade building my catering business from our kitchen table into 3 successful locations across the valley. At 58, I thought the hardest parts of life were behind us. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday in October. The desert sunrise painted our kitchen walls gold, and I was preparing for another busy day at Elena's kitchen. That's what I called my main location downtown. Marcus sat across from me with his usual black coffee and wheat toast, scrolling through emails on his phone. "Big presentation today," he said, without looking up. "Thompson Industries wants to discuss that merger. Might run late." I nodded, mentally noting another evening alone. Marcus worked as a corporate consultant, and lately, those late meetings had become as regular as sunrise. I'd married an ambitious man, so I'd learned to adapt. After Marcus left, I realized I'd forgotten my car keys. My sedan was in the shop, so I'd been borrowing his SUV. I grabbed his spare key from the kitchen drawer and headed to the garage. The black leather interior still smelled like his cologne, mixed with something else, something floral and unfamiliar. I adjusted the rearview mirror and caught sight of something glinting in the back seat. Wedged between the cushions was a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm that read, "Forever yours." My heart hammered against my ribs. I'd never seen this bracelet before, and Marcus had never bought me jewelry with romantic inscriptions. He was practical. Birthdays meant kitchen appliances or gift cards to my favorite bookstore. I held the bracelet up to the morning light streaming through the garage window. It was expensive, recent, and clearly meant for someone who appreciated romantic gestures, someone who wasn't me. That evening, Marcus returned home after 9 p.m., loosening his tie as he walked through the door. His usual tired smile seemed forced, and when I asked about the presentation, his response felt rehearsed. "Went well. Thompson's interested, but you know how these things drag on." I watched him pour a glass of wine and settle into his reading chair. The Marcus I'd married would have shared details about his day, complained about difficult clients, asked about my catering orders. This version offered only surface-level responses. "How was your day?" he asked, but his attention was already drifting to his phone. "Busy. Got a new contract for the mayor's office." I paused, studying his face. "Found something interesting in your car today." His hand stilled on his wine glass. "Oh, what's that?" I pulled the bracelet from my pocket and set it on the coffee table between us. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Marcus picked it up, examining it as if seeing it for the first time. "Huh. No idea where this came from. Maybe it belongs to one of your catering clients. You've been using the car for deliveries." His explanation sounded logical, but something in his eyes didn't match his casual tone. I've been reading Marcus's expressions for 35 years, and this wasn't honesty. Over the next week, I paid attention in ways I hadn't before. Marcus's phone, which used to sit openly on counters and tables, now stayed in his pocket. His work schedule became increasingly unpredictable. He had started wearing cologne on days when he'd never bothered before. The breaking point came Friday evening. Marcus said he had a client dinner in Scottsdale and wouldn't be home until late. I wished him well and settled in with a book. But around 10 p.m., my friend Sandra called. "Elena, wasn't that Marcus I saw at Enzo's tonight? I waved, but he didn't see me." Enzo's was our special place, the Italian restaurant where Marcus had proposed decades ago. We hadn't been there in over a year. "He's at a business dinner in Scottsdale," I said carefully. Must have been someone else then, though he had on that blue shirt you bought him for his birthday. After Sandra hung up, I sat in our quiet living room, pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. The bracelet, the late nights, the cologne, and now a lie about his whereabouts. Saturday morning, Marcus showered while I prepared breakfast. His phone sat on the nightstand, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt compelled to look. The screen lit up with a text notification from Lisa M. The preview showed, "Last night was perfect. Can't wait for..." My hands shook as I opened the full message thread. What I found destroyed 35 years of trust in 35 seconds. "Last night was perfect. Can't wait for our weekend getaway. You make me feel young again." Marcus's response: "You are young, beautiful. Leaving Elena gets easier each time." I scrolled up, finding months of messages, pet names, photos I couldn't bring myself to look at closely, plans for a future that didn't include me. But the message that broke me completely was Lisa's response to something Marcus had written. "I can't wait to help you run the restaurants. We'll make such a great team." My restaurants, the businesses I built from nothing. The dream I'd nurtured through early morning prep sessions and late-night bookkeeping. Marcus had never shown interest in my work beyond polite questions, but apparently, he'd been planning to claim it with his mistress. I screenshot everything, my photographer's instinct for documentation overriding my emotional breakdown. Then I put the phone back exactly as I'd found it. When Marcus emerged from the shower, whistling, I forced myself to act normal. "Coffee's ready," I called, my voice steadier than I felt. "You're an angel," he said, kissing my forehead. The casual affection felt like sandpaper on my skin. As Marcus dressed for another work meeting, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him blindly. I needed more information. I needed to understand the full scope of his betrayal before I decided how to protect myself and my businesses. After Marcus left, I called my sister Carmen in Tucson. At 52, she'd survived her own divorce 5 years earlier and had become fiercely protective of our family's women. "Carmen, I need help with something, and I can't explain over the phone." "Say no more. I'll be there in 2 hours." Carmen arrived with her laptop, a box of tissues, and the grim determination of someone who'd been through war. I showed her the messages, the bracelet, everything. "Elena, honey, I'm so sorry," she said, pulling me into a fierce hug. "But we're not going to let him destroy you. First things first, we need to protect your assets." Carmen's divorce had taught her about forensic accountants, private investigators, and family law attorneys. Within hours, we'd contacted Maria Santos, a family lawyer who specialized in complex asset protection. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Maria explained during our Sunday consultation, "Arizona is a community property state, but businesses built primarily by one spouse can be protected. We need to move quickly." Maria recommended a private investigator named David Chen. He's discreet, thorough, and his evidence holds up in court. By Tuesday, David was following Marcus. The photos started arriving that same afternoon. Marcus and a woman in her early 30s entering an upscale hotel. The same woman, Lisa, browsing real estate listings with him on Wednesday. Thursday brought images of them at a restaurant, looking at what appeared to be business documents. "She's not just his mistress," David reported during our Friday meeting. "I overheard them discussing expansion plans for your catering business. They're planning a complete takeover." The betrayal had layers I hadn't imagined. This wasn't just an affair. It was a systematic dismantling of my life's work. That weekend, while Marcus attended another business conference, I sat in my flagship restaurant after hours. The stainless steel kitchen I'd designed, the dining room where I'd celebrated countless customer victories, the office where I'd planned expansion, all of it felt different now. I wasn't just losing a husband. I was fighting for my identity, my future, my son's inheritance. If you've ever felt like your world was collapsing, you know that moment when you realize you have two choices: crumble or fight back. I chose to fight, but not the way you might expect. I'll share how I discovered the shocking truth about who Lisa really was, and how that discovery changed everything about my plan to save my family and my business. The confrontation that followed wasn't just about an affair. It was about protecting everything I'd built from a calculated scheme to destroy me. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss part. And if this story resonates with you, please share it with someone who needs to know they're not alone in their struggles. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is simply refuse to be erased. The truth about Lisa's identity changed everything I thought I knew about Marcus's betrayal. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about something so much worse that I questioned every relationship in my life. But sometimes, the deepest betrayals reveal who truly stands by your side when everything falls apart. It was a Tuesday evening in November when David Chen, my private investigator, called with urgency in his voice. "Mrs. Rodriguez, we need to meet immediately. What I discovered about Lisa changes everything." We met at a 24-hour diner near my downtown restaurant. David slid a folder across the table, his expression grim. "Elena, Lisa isn't just some woman Marcus met. Lisa Martinez is your business partner Rachel's daughter." The world tilted sideways. Rachel Martinez had been my closest friend and business partner for 8 years. She co-owned my second location and had been like family to Carlos and me, especially after her husband died 3 years ago. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Rachel's daughter lives in California. She's in graduate school." She was. Lisa graduated early and moved back to Phoenix 6 months ago. She's been living with her mother. But Rachel told everyone she was still in school. David opened the folder, revealing photos that made my stomach drop. Rachel, Marcus, and Lisa at what appeared to be a business meeting. Rachel hugging Lisa goodbye after one of their hotel encounters. Rachel and Marcus shaking hands outside a real estate office. "Rachel knows?" My voice came out strangled. "More than knows. She's orchestrating it. The plan isn't just to steal your business, Elena. They want to bankrupt you completely, force you to sell your shares at a loss, and then rebuild using your recipes, your client list, and your reputation." I spent the next hour poring over David's evidence, bank records showing mysterious cash deposits in Rachel's account, photos of Rachel meeting with my suppliers and key clients, documentation of a new business license filed under Martinez Rodriguez Catering, a name that would confuse my existing customers. "How long?" I asked. "Based on the evidence, at least a year, maybe longer." A year. While I'd been treating Rachel like family, she'd been systematically documenting my business operations, copying client contracts, and apparently pimping out her own daughter to seduce my husband. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I felt physically sick. These weren't crimes of passion or moment of weakness. This was a long-term conspiracy to destroy me. That night, I sat in my living room with printed copies of everything David had gathered. When Marcus came home at 11 p.m., claiming another late client meeting, I was ready. "How was Rachel today?" I asked casually. Marcus froze in the act of loosening his tie. "Rachel? Why would you ask that?" "Just wondering. You two have been spending a lot of time together lately." His laugh sounded forced. "I don't know what you mean. I barely see Rachel except when she comes by the restaurant." I set the photos on the coffee table like playing cards. Marcus's face went white as he recognized himself, Rachel, and Lisa in various compromising and business-related situations. 35 years, Marcus. Marcus sank into his chair, his hands shaking. For a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd married, vulnerable, caught, ashamed. "Elena, I can explain." "Don't." I held up my hand. "I don't want to hear about how this just happened or how you never meant to hurt me. This is premeditated, Marcus. You and Rachel have been planning this for over a year." The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of a marriage dying in real time. What Marcus told me next revealed just how deep the betrayal ran. "Rachel approached me 18 months ago," he said, his voice barely audible. "She said you were getting too successful, too independent, that you were changing, becoming someone she didn't recognize." I stared at him. My success was a problem? "She said you needed to be brought down to earth, that the business was consuming you, hurting our marriage. So you decided to steal it?" Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "At first, Rachel just wanted me to discourage you from expanding. But then Lisa came back from school, and Rachel suggested that if you lost focus on the business, you'd swoop in and save it, with them. Rachel knows the industry. Lisa has a business degree. They convinced me we could run it better, more efficiently. The calculated nature of it took my breath away. And Lisa seducing you was part of the plan." Marcus couldn't meet my eyes. "Rachel said you'd be more likely to sell if you thought I was having a midlife crisis, that you'd want a quick divorce to get away from the drama." Through tears and rage, Marcus laid out the entire scheme. 1. Lisa would seduce him, creating marital drama. 2. Rachel would position herself as my supportive friend during the difficult time. 3. I'd become emotionally dependent on Rachel while distracted by marriage problems. 4. Rachel would gradually take over more business operations to help. 5. Marcus would file for divorce, claiming half of everything. 6. Overwhelmed and betrayed, I'd sell my shares cheaply to get out. 7. Rachel, Marcus, and Lisa would emerge as the new ownership team. We researched other successful women, Marcus admitted. This approach works. Emotional destruction leads to bad financial decisions. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. You researched how to destroy me? Rachel has a whole folder of case studies. Women who lost their businesses during messy divorces. The next morning, I called in sick to the restaurant and instead spent the day reviewing every interaction I'd had with Rachel over the past year. With this new lens, her behavior made horrible sense. Rachel had been unusually interested in my expansion plans, my client contracts, my recipes. She'd volunteered to handle vendor relationships to lighten my load. She'd insisted on having keys to all locations for emergencies. She'd even suggested I make her my emergency contact for banking, since Marcus travels so much. I'd interpreted all of this as friendship. Instead, it was reconnaissance. I met with Maria Santos, my attorney, the next day. She reviewed David's evidence with the sharp focus of someone who'd seen this before. Elena, this isn't just adultery. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of intellectual property, and possibly racketeering. We're not just talking about a divorce anymore. We're talking about criminal charges. Maria's plan was methodical. 1. Secure all business assets immediately. 2. Change all passwords and access codes. 3. Install security cameras at all locations. 4. Document every interaction with Rachel going forward. 5. Build an airtight legal case before confronting anyone. The key, Maria explained, is that they don't know you know about Rachel's involvement. Let them keep believing their plan is working. For the next week, I had to become an actress in my own life. I continued treating Rachel as my trusted friend while secretly documenting everything she said and did. When Rachel came by the main restaurant that Thursday, she was her usual supportive self. "Elena, you look tired. Is everything okay with Marcus?" I forced vulnerability into my voice. "I think he might be having an affair." Rachel's eyes lit up with what I now recognized as excitement, not concern. "Oh, honey, what makes you think that?" I fed her carefully crafted lies about suspicious behavior, late nights, and distant attitude. Rachel listened with the intensity of someone taking notes. "Maybe you should hire a private investigator," she suggested. "I know someone discreet." The audacity was breathtaking. She was suggesting I hire someone to document the affair she'd orchestrated. David's team had installed hidden cameras at my restaurants after hours. What we captured was damning. Rachel entering with her own keys, photographing recipes, copying client files, even measuring spaces as if planning renovations. But the most revealing footage came from a Saturday night meeting in my downtown location after closing. Rachel, Marcus, and Lisa sat at my own conference table, dividing up my life like pirates splitting treasure. "Elena's emotional state is perfect right now," Rachel said on the recording. "She's distracted, suspicious, but still trusting me completely. I think we can accelerate the timeline." Lisa, looking nothing like the broken-hearted graduate student her mother pretended she was, spread out what appeared to be architectural plans. "I've already talked to 3 of her key clients about transitioning to our new company." Marcus nodded. "The divorce papers are ready. Once I file, Elena will be too overwhelmed to think clearly about the business decisions." Watching the people I'd trusted most treat my destruction like a business project was surreal and heartbreaking. The hardest part was deciding whether to tell my son Carlos. At 28, he worked as a software developer and had stayed largely out of the family business, though he'd always been proud of my success. I chose honesty. Carlos deserved to know his father was stealing his inheritance. Carlos's reaction was swift and furious. "Dad's always been jealous of you, Mom. I see it now." How he'd make little comments about your little catering hobby when you were building an empire. "I need you to stay calm around your father," I told him. "Can you do that?" "I want to help you destroy them," he said, his jaw tight. "We're not destroying anyone. We're protecting ourselves and making sure they face consequences for their choices." With Maria's guidance, I spent 2 weeks building an impenetrable defense. 1. Moved all business bank accounts to a new institution. 2. Changed every password and security code. 3. Revoked Rachel's access to all systems and buildings. 4. Secured legal ownership documentation for all recipes and client relationships. 5. Created a new business entity with Carlos as co-owner. 6. Hired additional security for all locations. Meanwhile, I continued playing the role of the unsuspecting wife and friend. The performance became impossible to maintain when Rachel suggested we expand our partnership. "Elena, I've been thinking, with all this stress with Marcus, maybe I should take on more of the day-to-day operations. You know, be the face of the business while you work through your personal issues." She was asking me to hand her the keys to my own castle. That's very generous, Rachel, but I'm managing fine. Her mask slipped slightly. Honey, you're clearly overwhelmed. I'm just trying to help protect what we've built together. What we built together. As if she'd been there for the 3 a.m. prep sessions, the rejections from banks, the health department inspections, the sleepless nights balancing books. I'll think about it, I said. Knowing the time for pretending was almost over, Mariah suggested we let them make the first move. They're getting impatient. Rachel knows you're suspicious about Marcus, so she'll want to accelerate the timeline before you discover her involvement. She was right. That Friday, Marcus came home with divorce papers. Elena, I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce. I looked at the papers, noting they were exactly as David had predicted, demanding half of all business assets, alimony, and custody of our intellectual property. Is there someone else? I asked, playing my part. Marcus had the decency to look ashamed. Yes, I'm sorry. Who is she? Her name is Lisa. You don't know her. The lies came so easily to him now. I need time to process this, I said, which was exactly what they expected me to say. Within hours, Rachel was at my door with wine and tissues, ready to console me through my unexpected betrayal. I can't believe Marcus would do this to you, she said, settling into my living room like she belonged there. I feel so stupid. There were signs, but I trusted him. Men can be such bastards, Rachel commiserated. But you know what? Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. You can focus completely on the business now. I don't know if I can handle running everything alone. You won't be alone. I'm here for whatever you need. I looked at this woman who'd eaten at my table, celebrated holidays with my family, and plotted my destruction for over a year. Thank you, Rachel. I don't know what I'd do without you. Her smile was triumphant. She thought she'd won. That weekend, while Rachel thought I was falling apart, I was actually putting the final pieces of my counterplan into place. Maria had prepared a comprehensive legal response that would not only protect my assets, but potentially put all 3 conspirators in prison. David had compiled enough evidence to prove conspiracy, fraud, theft of intellectual property, and multiple other felonies. Most importantly, I'd arranged for Rachel to be confronted with the truth in a way that would be recorded and witnessed, making denial impossible. The confrontation I'd planned would expose not just Marcus and Lisa's affair, but the entire conspiracy that Rachel had masterminded. What happened next changed all 4 of our lives forever, but not in the way any of them expected. Next, I'll share how I turned the tables on all 3 conspirators. The shocking moment when Rachel realized her plan had backfired, and how my son Carlos helped me rebuild something even stronger than what they tried to destroy. The moment I confronted Rachel with the truth about her betrayal was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But what happened next proved that sometimes the people who try to destroy you end up destroying themselves instead. It was a Tuesday morning in late November when I decided to spring my trap. I'd spent weeks working with my attorney, Maria Santos, and private investigator, David Chen, to build an airtight case. Every piece of evidence was documented. Every legal protection was in place, and most importantly, I had multiple witnesses ready to watch Rachel hang herself with her own words. I called Rachel that morning, making my voice sound broken and desperate. Rachel, I need help. Marcus is demanding I sell my share of the businesses to pay for his divorce settlement. I'm panicking. Oh, honey, that's terrible. But don't worry, I won't let him destroy what we've built. What we've built. Even now, she couldn't help claiming ownership of my work. Can you come to the downtown location this afternoon? I need to show you the financial documents Marcus wants. I'm so confused by all the legal language. Of course, Elena, I'll be there at 2 p.m. She practically purred with satisfaction. This was exactly what she'd been waiting for. Me, vulnerable and desperate, ready to make the terrible financial decisions that would hand her everything she wanted. That afternoon, I waited in my office at Elena's kitchen downtown. Through my window, I could see the dining room where I'd celebrated so many victories over the years. Today would either be my greatest triumph or my final defeat. At exactly 2 p.m., Rachel walked in with a leather portfolio and the expression of someone attending a funeral. Appropriately solemn, but secretly thrilled. Elena, sweetie, you look exhausted. I did look exhausted, but not for the reasons she thought. I'd spent the morning setting up recording equipment with David's team and briefing the witnesses who were waiting in the adjacent conference room. I haven't slept in days, I said truthfully. Rachel, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Her eyes sharpened with interest. Of course. You know you can trust me with anything. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Do you think I should just sell everything to Marcus and walk away? Start over somewhere else? Rachel leaned forward, and I saw the predator behind the concerned friend mask. Elena, honey, that might actually be the wisest thing you could do. Cut your losses, take whatever money you can get, and leave this mess behind. But what about our partnership? What about all the plans we made? Well, Rachel said, her voice carefully modulated, I've been thinking about that. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to buy out your remaining share. I could take over operations, keep the business running, preserve jobs for all our employees. There it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. You'd do that for me? It would be my pleasure. In fact, I've already had some preliminary conversations with potential investors. I could probably offer you, let's say, 30 cents on the dollar for your shares. Quick sale, cash in hand, clean break. 30 cents on the dollar for a business worth over $2 million. The audacity was breathtaking. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. Rachel, before I make any decisions, I need to show you something. I opened the folder and spread out the first set of photographs David had taken. Images of Rachel entering my restaurants with her own keys, copying files, photographing recipes. Rachel's face went white, then red, then white again. What are these? Security footage, Rachel, from cameras you didn't know about. I laid out more photos. Rachel meeting with Marcus and Lisa. Rachel talking to my suppliers. Rachel showing potential investors around my properties. I don't understand, Rachel stammered, but her eyes were already calculating escape routes. Don't you? Let me help you understand. I pulled out my phone and played the audio recording David had captured of Rachel, Marcus, and Lisa planning my destruction in my own conference room. Rachel's voice came through clearly. Elena's emotional state is perfect right now. She's distracted, suspicious, but still trusting me completely. The color drained from Rachel's face as she listened to herself plotting against me. 18 months, Rachel. You've been planning this for 18 months. You used your own daughter as bait to seduce my husband, systematically stole my business information, and manipulated me into trusting you while you destroyed my marriage. Rachel's shock gave way to desperate anger. Elena, you don't understand. This business was consuming you. You were becoming someone I didn't recognize. So you decided to steal it? I was trying to save you from yourself. The delusion was astounding. Even caught red-handed, she was convinced she was the hero of this story. By pimping out Lisa to seduce Marcus? Lisa is an adult. She made her own choices. choices you encouraged, choices you orchestrated. Rachel stood up, her facade finally cracking completely. You know what? Yes, I planned this. Because you deserved it. You forgot where you came from, Elena. You forgot who helped you build this business. You invested money 8 years ago. I built this business from nothing before I ever met you. And I made it profitable. I brought in half your clients. I handled the vendor relationships you couldn't manage. Her voice was rising to a shout. And I knew the witnesses in the next room could hear every word. What Rachel revealed next showed just how deep her resentment ran. Do you know what it's like to watch someone less capable than you get all the credit? To smile and nod while you're introduced as Elena's business partner when you're doing most of the real work? Rachel, you own 20% of one location. I own 3 restaurants because you got here first. Because you had a husband supporting you while I was raising Lisa alone after David died. Finally, the truth. This wasn't about business or friendship. This was about envy, pure and simple. So you decided to destroy my marriage to level the playing field? I decided to take what should have been mine all along. At that moment, the conference room door opened, and in walked Maria Santos, David Chen, and 2 police officers. Rachel's face went from red to gray. Mrs. Martinez, said Detective Williams, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of intellectual property, and computer crimes. As they read Rachel her rights, she turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. This isn't over, Elena. You'll never prove intent. I smiled sadly. Rachel, intent is exactly what we just recorded you confessing to. While Rachel was being processed, David's team was simultaneously arresting Marcus at his office. The scene was apparently quite dramatic, Marcus being led out in handcuffs while his colleagues watched. His reputation destroyed in a matter of minutes. Lisa, it turned out, had already fled Arizona the night before. Someone, probably Rachel, had tipped her off that I was getting close to the truth. But fleeing across state lines while under investigation only made her legal situation worse. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and business damage control. The arrest made local news. Local business owner exposes elaborate conspiracy by husband and business partner. My phone rang constantly. Reporters wanting interviews, clients wanting reassurance, competitors hoping to poach my business during the chaos. But the most important call came from my son Carlos. Mom, I'm so proud of you. Dad always underestimated your strength, but I never did. Carlos, I'm so sorry you had to learn about your father this way. I'm not. Better to know the truth than live a lie. I'd worried that the scandal would destroy my reputation and drive away clients. Instead, something unexpected happened. The story of my courage in exposing the conspiracy resonated with people throughout Phoenix. Clients called to offer support. New customers came specifically because they admired how I'd handled the situation. Elena, what those people did to you was terrible, said Mrs. Chen, a longtime client. But the way you fought back shows exactly why we trust you with our events. The business actually grew stronger. I hired additional security, implemented new protocols to prevent future breaches, and for the first time in years, felt completely in control of my empire. Over the next few months, the legal proceedings unfolded exactly as Maria had predicted. Rachel was convicted on multiple felony charges and sentenced to 3 years in prison plus restitution. Marcus pled guilty to conspiracy and received probation plus a restraining order keeping him away from me and my businesses. Lisa was eventually extradited back to Arizona and received a suspended sentence in exchange for testifying against her mother and Marcus. The betrayal had destroyed her relationship with Rachel permanently. But the most satisfying victory was financial. The court awarded me full damages for the theft of intellectual property, plus punitive damages that effectively gave me ownership of Rachel's house and remaining assets. The divorce from Marcus was swift and decisive. With the criminal conviction, I was able to keep all business assets and received a favorable settlement that left him with minimal resources to start over. The hardest part wasn't losing Marcus. By the time of the confrontation, I'd already grieved the end of our marriage. The hardest part was accepting that I'd been so thoroughly deceived by people I'd trusted completely. You couldn't have known, Dr. Patricia Reyes, my therapist, reminded me during our sessions. Manipulators count on good people, not expecting manipulation. But there were signs. How did I miss so many signs? Because you assumed good faith from people you loved. That's not a character flaw, Elena. That's what makes you human. The betrayal had made me suspicious of everyone, which wasn't healthy or sustainable. With Dr. Reyes's help, I learned to differentiate between reasonable caution and paranoid isolation. My relationship with Carlos deepened through the crisis. He took a leave of absence from his tech job to help me restructure the businesses and implement new security measures. "Mom, I want to be more involved going forward," he said. "Not because you need help, but because I'm finally old enough to appreciate what you've built." Carlos became my business partner in the truest sense, not as someone trying to take over, but as someone committed to protecting and growing what we'd built together. 6 months after the confrontation, my life looked completely different. I'd sold the house Marcus and I shared and bought a smaller place closer to my flagship restaurant. The new space felt like a fresh start rather than a consolation prize. I'd also expanded the business in ways I never could have while dealing with Marcus's subtle sabotage and Rachel's false partnership. 2 new locations, a catering truck for outdoor events, and a line of packaged sauces sold in local grocery stores. You know what's funny? I told Carmen during one of our weekly calls, I'm more successful now than I ever was with them holding me back. That's not funny, Elena. That's justice. The confrontation with Rachel was just the beginning of rebuilding my life. What I learned about forgiveness, trust, and starting over at 58 changed everything about how I approach relationships and business. 2 years after my world collapsed, I discovered that sometimes the life you rebuild from the ashes is better than the one that burned down. This final chapter isn't just about surviving betrayal. It's about creating something beautiful from the broken pieces and learning that. But this isn't a story about revenge. It's about rebuilding. And what I've learned over the past 2 years about forgiveness, trust, and second chances might surprise you. 6 months after the trials ended, I thought I'd be happier. I had my businesses back, complete control over my life, and justice had been served. But victory felt lonelier than I'd expected. Running 3 restaurants without any partners meant 80-hour weeks became normal. I'd eliminated the threat to my business, but I'd also eliminated most of my support system. Trust, it turns out, doesn't bounce back just because you've been vindicated. "Mom, you're working yourself to death," Carlos observed one evening as I balanced spreadsheets at 11 p.m. "I'm fine, just getting everything organized." "You've been getting organized for 6 months. When's the last time you did something fun?" I couldn't remember. Fun had been another casualty of the betrayal. Dr. Patricia Reyes, my therapist, helped me recognize that I was punishing myself for being deceived. "Elena, you're living like someone who doesn't deserve good things. I made terrible judgments about people. I trusted the wrong people completely." "So now you trust no one at all?" She was right. I'd swung from naive trust to complete isolation. Neither extreme was healthy. What would it look like to trust wisely rather than not at all? She asked. That question changed everything. Wise trust meant learning red flags without seeing everyone as a potential threat. It meant building relationships gradually rather than all at once. It meant trusting my instincts while still remaining open to connection. My first attempt at rebuilding social connections came through my church. I'd attended sporadically over the years, but after the divorce, I started going regularly, less for religious reasons than for community. The women's group met Tuesday evenings to plan charity events and discuss life challenges. I attended quietly for weeks before gradually sharing pieces of my story. You survived something that would have destroyed most people, said Margaret, a widow my age who'd been attending for years. But surviving isn't the same as living. Margaret became my first new friend post-betrayal. She understood loss, having buried her husband of 40 years to cancer. But she'd rebuilt a rich, purposeful life filled with travel, volunteering, and strong friendships. The secret, she told me, is learning the difference between being careful and being closed off. 18 months after the trials, I faced a decision I'd sworn I'd never make again: taking on a business partner. Jennifer Walsh was a former restaurant manager who'd approached me about opening a fourth location specializing in corporate catering. She had experience I lacked, capital to invest, and a business plan that was genuinely impressive. But she was also asking me to trust someone with my life's work again. I understand your hesitation, Jennifer said during our third meeting. What happened with Rachel was terrible, but I'm not Rachel. The difference was that this time, I was smarter about protection. Maria Santos helped me structure a partnership agreement that safeguarded my core business while allowing for growth. Jennifer would own 30% of the new location only, with no access to my existing restaurants or proprietary information. More importantly, I trusted my instincts. Jennifer was transparent about her financial situation, provided references I could verify, and never pushed for more control than we'd agreed upon. The fourth location, Elena's corporate kitchen, became our most profitable within 8 months. 2 years post-divorce, well-meaning friends started suggesting I should get back out there. The idea terrified me. Elena, you can't let Marcus ruin the possibility of love for you, Carmen said during one of our sister lunches. I'm 60 years old, Carmen. Maybe this is just my season for focusing on business and family. Bullshit. You've got 20 good years ahead of you. Don't spend them alone because 3 terrible people made terrible choices. I wasn't ready for traditional dating, but I did start accepting social invitations I'd been declining. Dinner parties with friends, community events, business networking mixers where the pressure was off romance, but I could practice normal human interaction again. I met David Morales at a Chamber of Commerce event, honoring local business owners. He was being recognized for his construction company's community service projects, and I was receiving an award for economic impact. During the reception, he approached me with a genuine smile and none of the predatory energy I'd learned to recognize. Elena Rodriguez, I've eaten at your downtown location probably 50 times. Best chicken mole in Phoenix. We talked about food, business, and our shared experience of building companies from nothing. David had divorced amicably 10 years earlier and had 2 grown daughters who lived out of state. He was comfortable with himself in a way that Marcus had never been. Would you like to have coffee sometime? He asked, as the event was winding down. I promise not to ask you to invest in anything or steal your recipes. His acknowledgement of my situation, without dwelling on it, was perfect. I said yes. My first coffee date with David lasted 4 hours. He was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in my business success, and refreshingly honest about his own life challenges. "I'm probably not ready for anything serious," I told him up front. "I'm not looking for serious right away either," he replied. "I'm looking for someone interesting to spend time with. Let's see where it goes." That low-pressure approach allowed me to relax in ways I hadn't expected. We started as genuine friends who enjoyed each other's company. Romance developed slowly, naturally, without the intensity that had made me vulnerable to manipulation before. 18 months into my new relationship with David, Marcus made an unexpected appearance at my downtown restaurant. He looked older, grayer, and thoroughly defeated. His conviction had made it nearly impossible for him to find work in his field, and he'd been living in a studio apartment across town. "Elena, could we talk? Just for a few minutes?" Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a coffee shop near the courthouse where our divorce had been finalized. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," Marcus began, "but I want you to know how sorry I am, not just for getting caught, but for betraying someone who loved me unconditionally." I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation. Instead, I saw genuine remorse and the heavy weight of consequences. "Marcus, I don't hate you anymore, but I also don't trust you, and I don't want you in my life. I understand. I wanted you to know that losing you was the biggest mistake I've ever made. You deserved so much better." Yes, I did, and now I have better. Rachel was released from prison after serving 2 years of her 3-year sentence. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned she'd moved to Nevada to live with her sister and was working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. Lisa had also left Arizona permanently, reportedly working for a marketing company in Seattle under her maiden name. The chapter of my life that included both of them was permanently closed. But I no longer felt the burning anger that had sustained me through the legal battles. Time and therapy had transformed that rage into something more useful. By year 3 post-divorce, Elena's Kitchen had become a genuine local empire. 4 locations, a catering truck, packaged products in grocery stores, and a cookbook deal with a small publisher. Carlos had transitioned from tech to full-time business management, handling operations while I focused on creative development and strategic planning. Jennifer had proven herself trustworthy and competent, exactly what I'd hoped for in a partner. "Mom, you've tripled revenue since the divorce," Carlos observed during our monthly planning meeting. "Turns out I work better without people actively sabotaging me," I replied, and we both laughed. The businesses were more successful than ever, but more importantly, they were authentically mine. Every decision reflected my values and vision without compromise or manipulation from people with hidden agendas. David and I had been together for 2 years when he proposed. We were hiking in Sedona, something I'd started doing for fun rather than just exercise, when he stopped at an overlook and got down on one knee. "Elena, I love you. I love your strength, your kindness, your incredible cooking, and the way you've rebuilt your life into something beautiful. Will you marry me?" My first instinct was panic. Marriage had been the source of my greatest betrayal. But looking at David, really seeing him, I realized this fear wasn't about him. It was about my past. "Can I have some time to think about it?" "Of course, there's no rush." I spent the next month in intensive therapy sessions, working through my fears about remarriage. Dr. Reyes helped me see that avoiding all risk wasn't protection, it was prison. "David isn't Marcus," she reminded me, "and you aren't the same woman who married Marcus 36 years ago." She was right. I was stronger, wiser, more aware of red flags, and better at setting boundaries. I could enter marriage as an equal partner rather than someone seeking completion through another person. I said yes. Our wedding was small, intimate, and joyful in ways my first wedding never was. Carlos walked me down the aisle. Jennifer and Margaret stood as my witnesses. Carmen flew in from Tucson with tears of pride in her eyes. "This is what you deserve," she whispered as she hugged me after the ceremony. "This is what love actually looks like." David and I honeymooned in Italy, where I researched regional cuisine for potential menu additions, and he took photos of architectural details for his construction projects. We were two complete individuals who enhanced each other's lives rather than trying to complete each other. 6 months after our wedding, I was working late in my downtown restaurant when a young woman walked in just before closing. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her immediately. "Mrs. Rodriguez? My name is Sarah Martinez. I'm Rachel Martinez's niece." My blood ran cold until she continued. "I wanted to apologize for what my aunt did to you. My whole family was horrified when we learned the truth. Sarah was a college student studying business, and she'd been following my story as a case study in entrepreneurship and resilience. I'm not here to make excuses for Aunt Rachel," she said, "but I wanted you to know that what she did doesn't represent our family values. And I wanted to ask, would you consider mentoring me? I'm starting my own catering business, and you're exactly the kind of successful woman I want to learn from." The request was so unexpected that I almost laughed. The niece of the woman who'd tried to destroy me was asking for mentorship. But as I looked at Sarah, young, earnest, clearly nervous, but determined, I saw an opportunity to transform something ugly into something positive. "Let me ask you some questions first," I said. We talked for an hour. Sarah was genuine, hardworking, and had a solid business plan. More importantly, she understood the gravity of what Rachel had done and wanted to prove that integrity could be profitable. I agreed to mentor her with clear boundaries and expectations. 6 months later, Sarah's Gourmet Catering became my first direct competitor that I was actually rooting for. 3 years after my world collapsed, I can honestly say I'm grateful for the experience. Not grateful for the betrayal itself, but grateful for who I became because of it. I learned that trust isn't binary. You don't have to choose between blind faith and complete isolation. Wise trust involves verification, boundaries, and gradual investment in relationships. I learned that my worth isn't determined by other people's treatment of me. Marcus and Rachel's betrayal said everything about their character and nothing about my value as a person. I learned that resilience isn't about being unbreakable. It's about knowing how to rebuild when you do break, and being willing to take calculated risks on people and opportunities that align with your values. Today, at 63, my life looks nothing like it did 5 years ago, and I couldn't be happier about that change. I have a marriage built on mutual respect and genuine affection. I have businesses that reflect my values and vision. I have relationships based on honesty rather than manipulation. A woman who trusted blindly and ignored red flags is gone. In her place is someone who loves wisely, trusts carefully, and protects herself without closing her heart. Marcus, Rachel, and Lisa thought they were destroying me. Instead, they forced me to discover how strong I actually was. If you're going through betrayal right now, please hear this. You will survive this. You will rebuild. And if you're wise about how you rebuild, what comes next can be better than what you lost. The key isn't becoming cynical or closed off. The key is becoming more discerning while remaining open to the good people and opportunities that are waiting for you. Thank you for following my story through all. Your comments, shares, and messages have meant more to me than you know. If this series has helped even one person recognize their own strength or make better choices about trust, then sharing my most difficult experience was worth it. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Please do so in supporting us. And remember, the people who try to destroy you often end up revealing just how indestructible you actually are. What's the most important thing you've learned about rebuilding after betrayal? Share in the comments. Your wisdom could be exactly what someone needs to hear today. Until next time, keep cooking up your best life. With love and gratitude, Elena.